as we are officially underway for the first time this season, and in their history, Loudoun United can call themselves the home side.
The first home victory for Loudoun United FC. And there is a happy manager in Ryan Martin.
20-year-old from Austin whips one in, and it's Murphy! Loudoun United equalize moments into the second half. Presley with a motor for days out of the right wing, and it's level at 2. The goal-scoring bonanza continues.
This is it. This is Loudoun.
See, dynasties aren't bought.
They're built. And legacies aren't created. They're earned.
Waking up to the now or the never. Feel the walls closing in. I see the wolves now, they're circling around me. But I am hungrier than them.
Loudoun United's first goal in franchise history.
It's Loudoun. What a rip from Connor Presley. Oh, how's that for an equalizer?
And what a goal, the third of the season for Griffin Yao, and that is wow!
Murphy puts on a great move, and Kyle Murphy with a terrific individual effort for the first goal at home for Loudoun United in their inaugural season. Equalizer, 93rd minute, Orlando Sinclair.
We are Loudoun.
We are Loudoun!
We are Loudoun.
We are Loudoun.
We are Loudoun.
We are Loudoun.
That was Loudoun.
We are united.
We are home.
Ryan Martin, head coach at Loudoun United FC. You're listening to TTM Podcast.
Welcome to the TTM Podcast. Ryan Martin, the head coach of FC Loudoun in America and in the USL. How are you doing?
I'm good. James, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here with you guys.
Fantastic. Brilliant. And for those that don't know, obviously you are the manager of FC Loudoun. And do you just want to give us, before we talk about yourself, should we just talk about Loudoun and how they came to be really and where they are in the football pyramid in America?
Yeah, for sure. So Loudoun is basically about 45 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., which is where our collectively with D.C United, since that we're essentially D.C United's reserve team. And we go off a different name, and we try to we have our own stadium just 45 minutes away, which seats 5,000 people. It's like a nice little setup, but it's a very wealthy area, and it's a very big hotbed for the amount of players in the United States. The local club, Loudoun Soccer Club, is like the third or fourth biggest in the United States in terms of just pure numbers of players in their youth academies, all the way from 5 all the way up to 18. So in that group, you're looking at 15,000 kids. So it's a very, very soccer heavy, excited area. Our ownership group from D.C United, which, obviously also owns Swansea City as well.
Oh, really?
Has some different ties there. Decided to basically create a kind of a middle gap and between the academy and kids that are 15, 16, 17 that are very gifted and the professional ranks, because in the U.S. it is a little bit of an older demographic of pros in our MLS in leagues there, and whether it's like a Wayne Rooney coming over or some different things, typically it's harder for young guys to break into MLS. So they were looking for a professional avenue, and we started, Loudoun United FC out in 45 minutes away. So that is kind of how we started. We play in the second division of the United States soccer pyramid, so right under MLS. And like last year, it's very different because obviously we don't have promotion relegation. So like a team like Nashville, for example, who is in MLS now, was in our league last year. So, we're playing with our 15, 16, 17-year-old kids against guys that are in the MLS right now. So it's a different setup that way. And then like Cincinnati was the same. Sacramento was the same in terms of being in the USL and then making the jump to MLS. Not necessarily performance-based. All those clubs did well, but mostly because their financial resources compared to everybody else, but not because they won the league, just because that's our system.
Brilliant. I mean, that is an exceptional overview into FC Loudoun. I mean, we won't lie. I mean, DC United are known obviously the world over. Anybody who knows anything about football will know about DC United, New York Red Bulls, LA Galaxy, the staple teams really of the MLS. Really touching base on yourself. Did you start off at DC at all there, Ryan?
No, so I've been with DC, just finishing my 5th year, really. I started as a manager of Loudoun last year, midway through the year. The head coach went off to the New England Revolution and joined that club in the first team staff with Bruce Arena. And then I took over from my previous position as the academy director. So I was the director of the academy at DC for 3 years. And wanted to get into professional management, and that was my goal and aspiration at the time. So it was a fitting jump, and I also had worked with a number of the kids in the academy. We're fortunate enough where 2 of our kids that we had in our academy were in our U17 national team for the United States last summer, and the 2 guys are over in the German Bundesliga with Wolfsburg, and we have 3 of our homegrowns between the age of 16 and 18 that are playing significant minutes for DC United at this minute. So it's a pretty good hotbed. Before that, I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I helped start that club from scratch with John Harkes, who had stints over at Sheffield Wednesday, West Ham, and was really the first American to really make it over into England. So John and I started that club, finished 3rd in the league. And before that, spent some time with Greg Berhalter and the Columbus Crew for 3 months. And then, at Wake Forest University for, 8.5 years, where, as we talked earlier about, had the fortune of coaching, someone like a Jack Harrison or like an Ian Harkes, who now plays for Dundee United in the Scottish Premier League and stuff like that. So that's been really my path to where I am now, and had a lot of different opportunities from professional to youth to college, and it's led me here.
It's a really, really interesting story, actually, and one that's captivating to listen to. It's really good. You've got some fantastic experience, and we'll touch on later on, obviously, to really get back to yourself in your career a bit later on with some other questions that we do have. But in terms of your tactical approach to management, as we were saying before, obviously your preferred formation from our basic research is a 4-2-3-1. Obviously, we gather with the holding midfielders. And you obviously choose to operate sometimes with a diamond. Now, if you compare that to maybe a Jurgen Klopp of Liverpool sets up with a particular system, and it's up to the opposition to deal with that system. Is yours the other way around? Do you tailor-make your approach to who you're playing?
Not really, to be honest with you. We our preferred formation is like a 4-2-3-1. At times we would go with with a diamond and 2 up front because we had 2 talented strikers. My job in this role is really to first and foremost promote and develop players for the first team. So it's that is my job above anything else. So if I can put them in a situation where it can maximize their decision making as young pros, and it can maximize their opportunity to be in places where they can fail as players, it's important, in their journey as young pros to, put them in vulnerable places and see, do they have resiliency? Do they have grit? But yeah, I prefer a 4-2-3-1. That's kind of where our club as a whole, from DC United to, myself at Loudoun, in an ideal world would do. Our first team is a little bit different because they need results or it's
Yeah.
people's jobs, and that's where, sometimes it might be 3 in the back, sometimes it's 5, 4. So they mix and match, but in an ideal world, if everybody's healthy and they have their ideal formation, it'd be a 4-2-3-1 as well.
So how much, how much influence do DC have over, for example, your team selection? Are you expected to play a similar way to the first team will with regards to philosophy? Do they have any influence in players? Do you get players given to you on loan, for example, where you required to give them a certain amount of minutes, that sort of thing? How deep's the link?
Yeah, so it's a pretty heavy link. Our owner is the same owner, GM's the same GM, and I have conversations with the head coach at DC on a regular basis. Obviously the COVID situation has thrown a little bit of a wrench in loaning up and down.
Yeah.
Typically, in a normal year, you can basically have guys that aren't playing for DC come down and get a certain amount of minutes and can play certain positions, and it makes it more fluid and easier. This year, with all the testing standards, we were not allowed to bring anybody, really down. So this year, we have what our roster was, which was fine. It was just very young. But in terms of on a normal year, and what we did is, when I was in as the academy director, we sat down, Ben Olsen, myself, GM, and we basically came up with, in a perfect world, here's our game model. Here's the way we want to structure it. Here are our positional profiles for certain positions of what the first team would like to see us produce and put through. So we put together kind of an ideal, model. I think you would see that more often with my team and the academy teams as opposed to the first team, because unlike Liverpool, in terms of our league, we don't have the budget that like a LA Galaxy or LAFC have, or those guys. So we're more on the end of, we have to develop from within and try to do it that way. And then if we can sprinkle a special player like a Wayne or someone in there, then so be it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest enigmas I've always found is a player called Freddie Adu. I don't know if you're aware of this player. We first came aware of him again on the football simulation series, Football Manager. He was always down as a wonder kid, and he's always someone who I followed. He had a spell at Benfica. He's had a trial at Manchester United. He's been all around. And the thing for me is, I think if there was maybe an FC Loudoun back then, that could have actually done wonders for Freddie, and it could have actually brought him on in the right way. I think one of the biggest frustrations, I think, maybe of American football is the career of Freddie Adu, because it's a shame. You still want to see him do well, don't you? You see him on Twitter, and he's still doing his thing now. But what you've got there is a really good thing going. James, I know you've got some things to talk about really with the USL in general and the structure.
Yeah, so just really, Ryan, how obviously it's a very unique system you have in the USA, not really comparable to anything else especially in Europe. How does it compare with regards to promotion, relegation? So, for example, in this country, you could start in low down in the lower reaches, you could get promoted season by season, you'd eventually end up in the Premier League. Obviously, over there, it's different. How do you make it from the USL into the MLS?
As a franchise?
Exactly. So we don't have that in this country.
So the only way to make it from the USL into MLS is a check of $250 million.
Hence, David Beckham got that done. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the reality. Like when MLS basically vets clubs to join it, it comes down to market size, infrastructure, what's the stadium going to look like, and a lot of times they use the USL there's a partnership with USL and MLS, and they use the USL as almost a testing market for a lot of cities. That's where when you start to see St. Louis making the jump, they have a USL team, Cincinnati, USL team, Nashville, same thing, Orlando, same thing. So a lot of times that's where it comes first. It's like, what will be the response of the market? And, so that's it. And then you have to have powerful owners, because it is a $250 million check right now, and it's going up every year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the draft situation for people of our listeners in the UK would only be used to just your general transfer fees and not really of a draft system. It feels alien, if you see what I mean. Unless you know exactly what you're talking about, it does feel alien. In terms of the going back to Cincinnati, and you say that you started that club from scratch. Was you heavily involved in the recruitment of players, and did it make it more difficult starting from scratch, or was it actually an easier package to sell to a player because it is a brand new club?
In Cincinnati, it was so John and I put the roster together basically from scratch, and had a budget and went around and we tried to find players from everywhere to try to make it as strong as possible.
Yeah,
it was an interesting one because when you sit down and you started recruiting people, you're recruiting people to a bunch of unknowns. What is the market going to do in Cincinnati? So our first year we played Crystal Palace in a friendly match. And we had 35,000 people at the game. And if you would have told me we would have had 35,000 people at any game, like when I signed my contract, I would have said no chance. I would have said, 5, maybe 10,000 people. But the market exploded. And, then it became a destination, and then it became kind of spiraled into this, really kind of a cool story from the outside of, in the USL in a second division, averaging a lot more than a lot of MLS teams. But yeah, we were selling, the ownership group was extremely strong. We knew that. We knew we would have a budget to attract, a very competitive group. So for us, it was about finding the right players. And we went on the road of finding guys that maybe had a chip on their shoulder because they didn't make it in for one reason or another. Maybe it was the style of play, maybe it was they didn't get on with the manager, maybe it just it happens all the time, right? Guys leave the club, one club didn't do great, then they do well in another one, and it's or one manager to the next. So it's, we wanted that. And that's where we found some hungry guys, and we're fortunate enough to have, finished third in the league out of 32 teams.
It's pretty good. You look at Cincinnati now, and they're managed by Yap Stam, know, and they've really come on. And, look at some of the players. They've got Siem de Jong there now, Jurgen Locadia. There's some, there's some good pool there. They're getting some good guys over there.
Yeah, I mean the facilities are fantastic. It's a neat little city. It's like I said, and their fan base is incredible. Even through all of this, right now they haven't really had a successful season in MLS yet. But if we didn't have COVID, the stadium would be sold out tomorrow.
Yeah, which is great. That's your bread and butter, isn't it? Getting bums on seats at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
I think the USL, like James said, a lot of people in this country don't necessarily know it too well, but there has been some British interest in the USL. I mean, Joe Cole played over there with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Sean Wright-Phillips was at Phoenix, and the lesser-known Peter Ramage was also at Phoenix. Didier Drogba, for example.
Yeah.
As well, at the moment, you've got Memphis. Am I right in thinking they're a start-up this season, Ryan? Memphis?
They started up last season.
So Tim Howard heavily involved. I think he might be the owner.
He's the owner and goalkeeper.
Oh, he still plays, does he?
He only plays in home games, but
okay.
He's got to be about 46 now, isn't he?
He's getting up there, but he'll play at home games. He just won't travel.
I think it's just American goalkeepers. They get better with age. You had Brad Friedel, who was incredible. You had Brad
he was brilliant at
Tottenham. Very good. Yeah, absolutely.
Casey Keller was over there as well.
Casey Keller,
yeah.
I think really Marcus Hanneman as well. I think you look at the real good players that we've had over in the UK. A lot of them, not maybe changing a little bit now, but historically in the UK, we've had really good American goalkeepers.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really until probably Clint Dempsey that we had Brian McBride as well was a good player.
Yeah.
But we haven't had an awful lot of outfield players, and there's a lot of high hopes for Pulisic at the moment.
Yeah, Pulisic hopefully, and we'll see what happens there. And obviously Zach Steffen now at Man City, and we'll see
I suppose for every Clint Dempsey and Pulisic, there is also a Brek Shea.
There's also Brett Shea.
And DeMarcus Beasley as well. But, so, you know, in all seriousness, we just a couple more things to go through with you, Ryan. I understand you're a very, very busy man, and we appreciate your time. Just a couple of personal questions, really, my friend. What is the typical day for you in the USL as a football manager?
Yeah, so I actually live in DC still. So I drive out to Leesburg, or Loudoun, which is about 45 minutes. So normally get up, get out on the road as early as possible. Try to get to the training ground around 7 or so. And then from there, the guys start arriving around 8. We normally train around 10. So there's a team meeting at 9:30. They're doing treatment, prehab, physio stuff, and then training. After training, the team lunch at the field, and then individual meetings with the guys, and then seeing where we are injury wise in terms of players, and then preparing the session for the next day. That's a typical day of what we're looking to do, but then it never really stops because you use the car ride, so it's 45 minutes on the way out because there's no traffic. On the way in, it can be an hour and a half because it's DC, and reminds it's like not dissimilar like London when I tried driving all the way over to West Ham's training ground. We were out near Heathrow and tried to drive all the way out there, and it was not easy, but and then on the way back, it's talking with agents, talking with other coaches, trying to see who's available, who's not, so it never really stops with anything. So it's then you're talking with management, you're talking with ownership, you're talking with a number of different people to make changes, see if you can make things better, bring in different players, give opportunities.
So when it comes to recruitment, Brian, what's your main sort of pool that you're fishing out of? Is it the colleges? Is it sort of MLS sort of squad players? Or do you ever really go crazy? What sort of areas you scouting?
So in the USL, you get 7 international spots. We typically right now use 5 this past year. We're essentially looking for players under the age of 25. We're looking for, especially like on an international market, we're looking for guys that basically we can loan into the first team that have a potential that could maybe make it into the first team. Down the road, after a year, after 2 years, and take a look at them. And they have to basically be under 25 because if we have certain friendly matches, in order to be able for us to loan them up, they have to be under the age of 25 with MLS rules. This past summer, we had between us and the first team 9 friendlies scheduled. We have, Derby County was coming over, obviously with that relationship. And, we had 2 French teams coming over from the first division, which would have been great for my players because they would have gotten most of those games. Which would have been great. But that's kind of our demographic. In terms of the internationals, we had a French kid that played in university, and then we had 3 Africans that I went over and scouted last November in the Ivory Coast and Ghana. Of that group, 1 just moved on to Portugal, and 1 is on an extended trial with the first team now. So
fantastic, brilliant.
Yeah.
We've got another one for you as well. It's a bit of a tricky one. What is the most stressful part of working in the USL? Surely there's some frustrations, as there is in any job. What is the stressful parts of it?
Yeah, I think the stressful parts of, you're really looking at, I think the stressful parts for our job or my position is at the end of the day, you're playing against standalone teams and franchises that have significant resources or have a Joe Cole or a Drogba or these or that. And, I'm really at the mercy of the first team's decision in a lot of ways. So you always have to keep your perspective of, are we going to beat Joe Cole tonight? Probably not, because we have a 16-year-old kid that's a rookie or just first year. And then it's, this guy has to play 45 minutes or this guy's 60. And, so at the end of the day, that's probably the most challenging part with the USL is especially being like a second team, is always just dealing with that. And then it's like, you might have your captain who might have trained his heart out all week and is a good kid and a good player and deserves to start, but he might not start because, if he's a 6 and the first team sends a 6 down, so then managing people becomes challenging, different, unique, because it's like, well, in my mind, you deserve to start, but I can't start you because this is the situation. So those are probably the biggest frustrations of the USL. But to be honest, it's a very competitive league, and it's a very hard league. And it's funny, like, we talked about like Jack Harrison Leeds, and I started watching the championship a lot the last couple of years, and what a hard league that is.
Oh yeah.
Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. You have ex-European champions in that league, in Nottingham Forest, for instance.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's widely believed in this country that the Championship is the hardest league to get out of.
Yeah.
If you get out of the Championship into the Premier League, it is so hard. And if you do, you deserve it at the end of the day. There's massive clubs with big budgets down there that just can't crack. There's no right way to do it. There's no exact formula of how to get out of the Championship. It's such a difficult league.
Oh, and the amount of games you have, the amount of different styles of play, and then you get to the playoffs at the end, and I mean, some of the best games you'll see all year.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, if you win that, it's around a 40 to 50 million pound jackpot, which is huge. Some people believe that actually going up in the playoffs is actually better than finishing second or even first, due to prestige, lifting a trophy, a trip to the hallowed surface of Wembley. Obviously, Richie Williams is a man that you'll know very well, no doubt. What did you really learn from him at DC?
From Richie Williams, you said?
Yeah.
So I was an academy director when he was coaching the team, and Richie's he kind of falls in that mold of him and Bruce Arena and a lot of even John Harkes when I was working with him. It's kind of like they're a very similar type of manager where they're truly more of a manager, they have very good relationships with the players. They have very good. They can have a guy run through a wall for them. They can have, and it's really almost like your old English manager system. And it's, so for him and the more I'm around, Ben Olsen's is similar. It's like the way they can relate to people, the way they can get something out of a player, the way they can, communicate, was tremendous. And, Richie did a great job. And it's just funny to see when they all played under Bruce Arena at multiple places. And then you start to see, how they're all, most of them are all very similar in that. And when I always say, it's like the management of games and how to get results and player selection in terms of finding people with intrinsic characteristics of, grit, determination, winning, resiliency, and those are some of the things that Richie did a great job when he put the roster together and instilled in the group.
So I see now, even you mentioned sort of the disciples of Bruce Arena. Landon Donovan, is he managing in the League Two now of the USL?
Yeah, so he's in the same league. Yes, Landon's in that, and he worked with, obviously with Bruce for a long time. And it's a long list of guys that have played or worked underneath them that have even Bob Bradley spent so many years with Bruce and different things. So he's almost like a godfather of coaching in the United States.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
He's well known on these shores as well, as is obviously, your Bob Bradleys of the world as well. He was obviously, and his son, a good player too, actually.
Michael Bradley.
Yeah, right in the middle of the park. Great player. And then obviously to yourself in the future, surely you're going to come over and test yourself in Europe, Ryan.
To be honest, I would at some point in my career. I'd love to get to Europe. I started I got my highest U.S. soccer licenses. I started a year ago actually doing my UEFA badges just to see if I can get a foot in the door at some point. Obviously, you've got to face this stigma of being an American coach trying to get to Europe, which is challenging, and it's, that's why you always hope like Bob Bradley did better, or even like a David Wagner, who is quote unquote American, had a better had a good run at times, but had a better spill. So you're always rooting for guys like that to do well. Yeah, like who knows? I at some point would love to give it an opportunity and see kind of where it goes. That's where the top soccer in the world is, over in Europe. So
how low down would you go to get a foot in the door in England?
That's a good question. I don't even know an answer to that.
Would you go League Two?
Possibly.
Would you take on Morecambe if they gave you a call? Said, Brian, we're really struggling. Do you fancy coming and managing the Shrimpers? What would you say?
I think you'd be better at Walsall, actually, right in the heart of the country.
Exactly. I think you can take, like I said, any experiences are interesting, right? It's like your journey is it can be very different. That's where, like, when we look you look at like a Bob Bradley and you see his journey from U.S. to the Egypt stint, to Norway, to France, to Wales. You're like, wow, what an interesting path he took.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting situation. So yeah, at some point would love to get over there. Every time I've been over to visit and see games, it's just a different atmosphere. USA is coming on, and some big crowds and some good things. But going to Europe, there's really just nothing like it, because people live, breathe, sleep the game. And
it's like a religion, especially for England. We win nothing, yet we still have hope, and we'll never give up our hope of winning something. The creators of the game can't win it. It's frustrating. One person that really is really breaking down barriers, as you put it, in Europe would be Jesse Marsch, doing an absolutely outstanding job at Red Bull Salzburg. As a Liverpool fan, we saw him firsthand, obviously at Anfield last season, and there was a documentary following him. Have you seen that in the changing room at half time, when he really explodes and they come back from 3-0 down to make it 3-3? But obviously Mohamed Salah obviously gets that winning goal for Liverpool. What are your remarks on Jesse?
To be honest, Jesse, had a great career here with New York Red Bull, and really got a lot out of a very young roster. He just did a great job, and then it was funny. I remember watching a game, and this is kind of before I even knew he had the ambition to go to Europe. Was like, he started, it's like the 92nd minute, and he's running out to catch a plane to Europe to do his UEFA badges to get it in. And then you're like, okay, well, he's going to make the jump at some point, I was just very happy to see, his success, and I think he's just going to keep growing and get better with it. His energy, his passion, the way the guys play for him is tremendous, and I know he goes under, more of a Bob Bradley type of model, and very cerebral, played at Princeton, a high Ivy League school. So he's a very bright guy, and, had a chance. He did a couple, webinars during the COVID situation for, a group of friends and I, and, just to pick his brain and see what he's doing was incredible. I mean, it's, one is for him to spend that time with, young coaches that are, ambitious or whatever, was great that he did it. And then the second part is just the insight and thought, and what he's doing in Salzburg is tremendous. And as an American coach, just, hoping he keeps succeeding and keeps moving forward, because, then maybe that opens the door for me or someone else down the road.
I think it will. I think he's full of enthusiasm. When they get the third goal, Haaland at the time puts it in front of the Anfield Road end. I mean, my heart sank. I thought, my God, he's really got them going. He sprints down the touchline. I'm thinking, this guy's a character. Not since Mourinho, really, if we saw someone with the, I would say, not ego. I don't think that's fair.
Effervescence?
Yeah, absolutely. And someone with a bit of class and passion. He is a good manager, and one to really look out for. Ryan, I think it's been an absolute pleasure. We're completely aware you've got another call to get to, and we respect that. Have you enjoyed your stint on the TTM podcast?
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been great, and it always helps when you have the two hosts with the same name. So it was for me. So No, but I quite enjoyed it. So I really appreciate you guys' support and trying to get the USL out there. It's it is they say the fastest growing league in the world with the amount of teams coming in and expansion and some different things. So and the level is getting better. It's like I said, it's still got a ways to go and everything we're doing, but I think it's getting better and better. And no, I really appreciate your guys' time as well, and look forward to your continued success.
Hello to all our fantastic TTM podcast listeners. We have a real treat for you. Do you have trouble with your sleeping? Do you suffer with anxiety or depression? Do you still have those aching muscles that you keep talking about? Then we have the perfect product for you to try. Supreme CBD. It comes in many different forms. For example, Supreme CBD Face Cream. It uses organic, natural ingredients, leaving your face feeling smooth and also without the use of synthetic compounds. For those aching muscles, there's Supreme CBD Muscle and Joint Rub, which penetrates deep into the skin and muscle joints, combining the therapeutic benefits of eucalyptus, rosemary, cinnamon bark, and black pepper in a wonderfully hydrating aloe gel. Also, there's more available. We have all of the oils, vapes, and even gummy bears, which are vegan. Now for the best part. Head over to Supreme CBD UK today and enter our unique discount code TTM30 and you will get 30% off of everything on the website. That code again, TTM30. It really doesn't get any better. Head over to supremecbd.uk.